Hello, everyone. Today, I want to talk to you about divine bliss and ecstatic union and how that really plays a role in fixing what's going on in the world. As an apostle, one of my main missions, really the main mission, is to make earth more like heaven, right? It's to observe the culture of my home and bring that culture everywhere that I go and establish places on earth that resemble heaven. Now, as a whole, most of us on our spiritual journey are on an apostolic mission in that we're accessing spirituality, not just for our own gain and our own ego trips, but to make the world a better place at the very least. Now, when we look at the world, one of the common issues that you'll hear come up is pollution. They'll talk about how the water is polluted, how the food is polluted. It has things in it that makes it not as favorable for human consumption. We talk about how, we talk about all these different areas of pollution. We talk about the effects that, greenhouse gases, burning natural resources, oil, and other things like that are having on the planet, different levels of radiation that slowly but surely, in its own way, affecting everyone. But what I've seen overall to be a bigger issue is that there's a pollution within the collective consciousness of humanity that bleeds into all of our activity. Our actions are not our own. The thing about the soul is that it's all connected. That yes, you do have an individual aspect of yourself, but that individuality is part of a collective. And truthfully, it's a democracy that works. And what we see is that the state of the masses is the state of the world. That we tend to experience what most people are accepting. The world that we're in, yes, it's a projection, but it doesn't mean that it's fake. It just speaks to where the responsibility lies. So to refer to the physical world as a construct or a projection doesn't undermine its importance. It just changes where it fits in a ranking system. It means truthfully, that should tell you to look higher. When you look at the problems of the world, yes, they exist. Yes, they are real, but that tells you that the problem is happening on another plane, even if that plane is simply astral. Meaning that there's conscious things happening. There's pollution in the astral plane that's affecting us. So part of that solution is to change what you're living in. It's very simple and unhelpful to simply say that as long as I'm fine, nothing else matters. That's very selfish and that doesn't help anyone. It does me no good to say, you know what, as a man, I don't struggle, I don't deal with misogyny, so it must not be real. I pretend it doesn't exist. That means it goes away. No, my freedom or lack of experience of a problem doesn't negate it for other people. I'm not starving. I'm pretty well off. That doesn't mean that other people aren't. I might be able to live my life in such a way that racism doesn't affect me directly, but that doesn't mean that it isn't affecting other people. So I believe it's something to be careful of as you begin to grow in your spirituality, that you don't harden your heart and become distant from the chaos in the world. Because what happens is you find yourself becoming exclusive, and then you stop being productive when it comes to actually making earth more like heaven. The whole reason that we have such a job is because earth is not already perfect. It's in a process of being perfected. So the issues in the world are more so products of inactivity more than they are a standard that we just have to deal with. It's a standard that we've accepted. Standard meaning the bar, right? This is what we're willing to accept as a collective, therefore we see it. And we get to watch this happen, that as the collective stops putting up with certain things, we notice those things start to fizzle out, they lose power, they die. Right now, we're in an age where people aren't tolerating death as previous generations have. So we're watching a bunch of people past the age of 100. We're watching people become more health conscious. Whether they're doing their health journey right or not, the consciousness is changing where health is now a common topic. You hear a lot about fruit cleanses and juice cleanses and detoxes from people regardless of culture, because we're moving into a space where the collective says, hey, I don't want to die and I don't want to suffer the way that generations before me have suffered. That is a response to pollution, that we've recognized that something in previous generations was seen as acceptable in their collective conscious. And truthfully, when you look at the way that generations are structured, the generation that comes next always comes with the solutions to the generation before. But because of pride and ego, usually they have to fight instead of working together. As it's been said many times before, the number one enemy of the new move of God is always the last move. Because there's this thing within humanity where we try to capitalize on and own a monopoly on certain experiences, certain entities. We try to own the copyright on certain things. We create hazing rituals. You have to come in through this way, that way. Not because that's actually required, but because that's the way I did it and everyone has to suffer as I did. But what we're watching, right, is that as the generations come, like you think about family dynamics. I've seen this multiple times. I pay attention, I do my research, and I'm an observer. And I've seen that the children of a parent, of their parents, oftentimes come to Earth, almost every time they come already embedded with the solutions to whatever their parents struggled with. That's a response to pollution. A mother has no boundaries. So guess what? A kid raises up and says, I don't want to deal with that. So the child will have the boundaries where the mother may not have. Dad might have been abusive. Son refuses abuse at any cost. That's not accidental. That's the conscious collective trying to correct the pollution. So we'll notice that the problems are changing. Let's say multiple families and domestic violence might have been more common at one time than another. Certain slurs, certain offenses were more popular in one generation than they are now. What was just, oh, that's just the way we talk, became totally unacceptable 2 to 3 generations later. I'm saying this to paint a picture that the collective is responding to pollution, and if you watch it, you see where we're going. But when it comes time to be proactive in that, see, those are passive things. Those are things that we're not necessarily doing on purpose, but we're able to track it. And that again speaks to the fact that on a collective level, all of our individual souls are in communication with each other. Similar to the experiments that you'll see them do, where I remember there was one study they did where they hooked a rat up to a machine and they had it run through a maze. And they had another rat hooked up to a different machine on the other side of the world. And the moment the first rat figured it out, the other one figured it out. That it was an immediate drop of information. That's how the astral plane works. It's the world of information. Now, most of us only engage it subconsciously, meaning that we're being influenced on a plane that we're not even aware of more times than not. And I'm not even talking about psychological programming through the media. That's something else. That's more so psychology, but that's not what I'm referring to. I'm saying in an actual realm, there are things happening that are affecting us all, and we're not conscious enough to view it more times than not. So we're experiencing things and we're reacting to things on the earth that we think start on the earth. But in fact, they started in other planes of existence. So when it comes to really being proactive in problem solving, let's just say that you have to encounter something greater than the thing you're trying to solve. And then you become that encounter for everything that encounters you. It's a simple principle, and I talk about this in my book when I'm talking about the anatomy of the spirit. But a simple principle is that everywhere that you go, you bring everywhere that you've been with you. You receive from where you are, and you bring with you everywhere that you've ever been. And what that means is that when you arrive, when you show up somewhere, people aren't just encountering you, they're encountering your story. Whether directly or indirectly, they're encountering your makeup, what you've been around, your culture. So what I've found to be a great solution is that I prioritize spending time in the heavens. I prioritize spending time with the royal family and with the seven spirits and with saints and angels and things, because it gives me a different culture to bring with me in the world. Because when we begin to understand the human system, you are actually a temple, and it's not just metaphorical. Literally, you are the place that bridges realms. You are the point of contact between the spirit world and the physical world. Truthfully, you bridge all worlds. Even the astral plane is included in that. You're a triune entity that acts as a bridge of all three locations, a walking stargate. So what happens is, should you allow yourself to tap into those higher realities, you become a doorway for the world beneath to experience those higher worlds. It puts it into a greater perspective when it says that heaven and earth shall pass away, and there will be a new heaven and a new earth. Did you know that back then that's what they called the temple? Heaven and earth is what they called the temple because it was the place where heaven and earth met, where they met it. Meaning that when you go to the temple, this is the place where me and my earthly needs are able to encounter heaven and receive heavenly resources, heavenly breakthrough, heavenly access. Now we get rid of the temples of brick and mortar, and now that becomes you. Or rather, you're reminded that that's always been you. You are now the place where heaven meets earth. And you get to decide whether you live that life offensively or defensively. Are you protecting an internal heaven that's fragile, or are you tapping into a heaven that's more powerful than anything? So you choose to let it out. And you let that invade the world that you're encountering. Now we're moving into apostolic missions. Now we're starting to see the earth look like heaven, and all you did was go to the store and get groceries. Not because you did something special, but because you brought the right realm with you to a place where people needed it. We look at the pattern of Yeshua and we see that he didn't spend a lot of time in temples. He spent most of his time around regular people, around people that most people considered outcasts. So he was with the prostitutes. He was with the tax collectors. He was with the liars. He was with the businessmen. He was hanging out with people because he knew that greater is what was on the inside of him than what they were in. And while what they were in may not have been good, he understood that they would only get better by encountering him, that they couldn't pollute him. So what I'm telling you today is that if you begin to engage the heavens in whatever facet you can engage them, whether you're visibly seeing it, you're feeling it, you're participating in the culture, when you let your life be the point of contact where heaven gets to invade earth, you get to watch things change just because you were there. Just because you brought heaven with you. There have been plenty of healings that I've done in the past where all I did was show up. I didn't pray for anyone. I didn't talk to anyone. They got close. I'll tell you a story. One day I went to get an oil change. This was like a year or two ago. I went to get an oil change, and I was very introverted this day. I didn't really want to talk to anyone. Um, I wasn't rude, but I didn't want to talk to anyone. I wasn't trying to socialize. I just wanted to get my oil change and go. So I pull up to the mechanic shop. They pull me through. They stand at the front. They wave you in, a little to the left, a little to the right. And he pulls me in, has me cut my car off, and they go through their usual procedure. All right, this is when you should come back, all of that, right? They working on everything. They do my oil change, and I'm just sitting there, just passing time. My car is off, so I'm not listening to music. So I'm almost in a meditative state where I'm just sitting there, quiet, just waiting. And as usual for me, because of how I've developed myself over the years, yes, I feel power on me, but that's not unusual. I always feel power on me. So I'm just sitting there waiting for them to finish. Eventually, he tells me, he's like, all right, you're good. You can go. As I'm pulling off, I hear him say, oh, my back doesn't hurt anymore. Huh, that's strange. And then he goes back to work. I'm telling you that because in a moment where I wasn't trying to minister, I didn't want to talk, simply because I carried enough heaven with me, heaven was able to affect someone else's life. Here's the thing about darkness, death, and deception. They don't exist. They're not entities of their own. They are absences, meaning that they only exist in the absence of something else, Deception does not exist on its own. Deception is the absence of truth. Darkness is the absence of light. Death is the absence of life. They don't exist on their own. They're the absences of things that do exist. Meaning that when you start to see the world get darker, that means that we're absent, that there aren't enough people living from the right place, people who've mandated and live as a standard of life, light, and truth. They're not outside. I've met tons of powerful mystics. I know people who prophesy better than me. I know people who heal better than me, but a lot of them aren't active. I know people who heal so well, they could walk into the hospital, go room to room, and clear it out by themselves. But they're not active. They're at home. They're at work. They have access and they're not using that access. So what does that mean? More people die, not because someone doesn't have the ability, but because they're simply inactive. They're not present. And when the sons of light are not present, darkness gets to play. So that then begins to change the way that you understand issues, is that this is only happening because light is absent, because life is absent, because truth is absent. It's not more powerful, it's just present. It's filling in a space that should be filled. Something that should be filled with life, light, and truth is empty. So now it's a place of darkness. So you look at the rough sides of town. You look at the rough cities, rough neighborhoods, rough homes, rough parts of the family, rough countries. You're not looking at, oh no, God, we need you right now. No, you're looking at sons who are hiding in buildings and they only display their light Sunday morning. And then they go back into hiding. So the rest of the world that needs their light doesn't get it. So part of the solution is to be as bright and brilliant as you can be and just go outside. Simply, yes, just go do whatever you were going to do. Just don't hide yourself when you go. The other thing that I want to talk about when dealing with this collective pollution is meditation and prayer. Because again, when you start to really live a life of deep meditation and deep prayer, you start to access realms. You start to access capabilities. You start to tap into some stuff. And what you tap into then becomes the experience that other people have around you. And it doesn't take a lot of people, it just takes active people. I've been very open about the fact that I live in a state of bliss. I have for the last several years. I've just learned to function. I've learned to talk and communicate and appear normal. But for me, I'm always in a deep state of ecstatic union, of divine bliss, a level of bliss that would incapacitate other people. I've just learned to function because there's a simple rule that I live by when it comes to accessing realms, impartations, activations is that after you encounter something greater than yourself and it begins to change you, don't go backwards, make that your new normal. And I practice what I preach. So every time I encounter something great and it overwhelms me and I have to recalibrate, I let myself take time to recalibrate and I let that be my new normal. So you meditate, right? And here's the thing, right? When it comes to these deeper states of prayer and meditation, intellectualism is robbing you. And understand what I mean by this. I'm not telling you to be dumb. I'm not telling you that intelligence is bad. I'm saying that when you begin to worship intellectualism, it talks you out of the flows that bring results. And most of intellectualism today is birthed out of fear. You're afraid of giving the wrong answer, so you don't participate until you have the right answer. There's no room for mystery. There's no room for learning. There's no room for encounter because you won't encounter what you don't understand. And what you fail to realize is that when you move outside of the physical world, some things, and truthfully, most things, need to be experienced in order to be explained. You have to encounter it in order to understand it. And some of that is not verbal. So when you limit yourself to what you can get your mind to agree on, to what your ego, that means you don't encounter anything. That leads to you having false awakenings. What do I mean by a false awakening? It means that you access true information without the processes that make that true for you. Therefore, you get none of the manifestations, but you have all the answers. Some of the keys of a false awakening is that your awakening led you into comment sections to rant and rave and to preach and teach. False awakening. Your awakening led to you becoming bitter and aggressive towards people who haven't quite figured it out yet, instead of compassionate towards them. If your awakening led you to a place where you're still trying to prove yourself and prove to other people, yeah, you're not awakened, you're actually talking in your sleep. If you had an awakening and access no wisdom of your own and only have the ability to regurgitate the other things that you heard, it's no different than your alarm going off or your ringtone playing while you're asleep and you're in your dream singing the song. It's just sleep talk. So what I'm telling you is that you need to get comfortable in the unknown. It's in the cloud of the unknowing that you actually start to tap into some things, that you get something of value, that you become so heavenly minded that you're finally some earthly good. I got inspired years ago hearing stories of like Smith Wigglesworth, who would spend so much time in prayer. Pretty much when he wasn't ministering, he was either reading, he was either studying or praying. And he would pray into such a dimension that other people found it uncomfortable and unbearable to be around him while he was praying, to the point that they would actually make bets with each other to see who could last the longest in the room with him while he was praying, because so much power and so much energy would get released that they'd have to leave. One day, Smith Wigglesworth, he goes into town. There's a few stories like this where he walks into a warehouse and the presence that he brings with him, the glory that he brings with him is so strong that all the people in the warehouse fall down. They collapse under power. They're shaking, they're crying, they're laughing uncontrollably. All he did was show up. There's another story where he gets on a train because he has somewhere to be. So he's traveling. He gets on the train, he sits down, and everyone in his train car, uncontrollable tears, uncontrollable laughing, uncontrollable shaking. They're overwhelmed. They're passing out. They're going into trances. He's not ministering. He's just going to travel. He just has somewhere to be. But he didn't leave heaven in his home, in his prayer room. He brought it with him when he left. Charles Finney, very similar. He would just be walking up to where too many people were, and they would be slain in the spirit. They start shaking, laughing, falling. They start to experience intense states of bliss just because he showed up. Catherine Kuhlman, there's many stories where she gets done ministering and she's trying to avoid the crowd. So she tries to sneak out the back through the kitchen. And when she walks into the kitchen, everyone in the kitchen passes out. If you're a One Piece fan, Conqueror's Haki. If you're a Bleach fan, Spiritual Pressure. So these are real stories. People have experienced this. What I'm saying is that so much happens when you stop leaving your spirituality at home. Yes, there's certain things to remain private, but the stuff that actually changes the world shouldn't be left at home. Your capability to heal, your miracles, your signs, your wonders, the power, the wisdom that you carry is for the rest of the world. So you do a great disservice of trying to access power at home, to never use it when you're not at home. And truthfully, that's one of the best ways to make sure that you don't get it, is that you want to have it just to say that you have it, but not use it. It's a lack of compassion, and compassion or love leads to power. And that's what I've experienced, is that as I've sat in these states of divine bliss, of ecstatic union, I've encountered love that caused me to move and do things that an introvert like myself would never choose. I don't like making videos. I don't like being on camera. I don't like fellowshipping as much as I do. But I do it because that's what the Spirit is leading me to do. It's outside of my comfort zone, but I'm grateful for the results. The results make up for me being uncomfortable for a time. So let's just say your access, your real progress is on the other side of the stuff you don't want to do, but have the capabilities to do. Or in some cases, the reason you aren't manifesting is because you have no compassion, and heaven cannot reward something that doesn't match its culture. It's apostolic work. If the culture of heaven is bliss, joy, love, rest, and peace, and you live none of that as a culture, why would they bless you? Why would they give something that doesn't resemble itself more? No. So when you really start to walk out this ambassadorship, you start to act as that bridge. Now that changes your level of importance. You're not just someone with access to heaven. You're a representative of heaven coming to distribute the resources of heaven to a world that needs it. Earth is a group project. Yes, Earth was once perfect. It fell. We're working on it now. So the more people we have that live in a state of bliss, that are led by love, led by compassion, and are outside bringing that world with them, that's the sooner we get to watch the world change. I've read about saints, people that walked in such a depth with the kingdom principles that they embodied, that people were unable to do certain acts around them. I read a book one time and they talked about a temple that the people had cultivated it in such a way, because they had only ever said positive words there for so many years, that it was impossible to think negative thoughts near the building. reading stories about Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, where a guy comes and spits on him, and because of the state of bliss that he's in, that the people around him were unable to jump on the guy that did it. That he was so subdued that it subdued the crowd. He was so tranquil that it tranquilized the crowd. I've heard people mention this about Ramana Maharshi, Ananda Mahima, where just being around them catapulted them into spaces and even prevented certain thoughts. This is something that many of you have experienced when working with Holy Spirit, because she does this a lot, where she will silence your thoughts in order to get your attention. You go in thinking you're getting ready to have a dialogue and your thoughts just keep failing. That's power. That's bliss. What I'm saying is that you have to be willing to go on the journey of unknowing. Let the experience be the doctrine. Sit in states of bliss, sit in realms of the spirit and in the astral plane that are so beyond normal for you that it bewilders you. You don't know what happened. You don't know what you saw. You don't know how it works. Yet it blesses you. You don't have to know it and understand it and have it fully dissected, because guess what? You don't have any reason to need to teach it. Just because you encounter something doesn't mean that you have to have it so figured out that you can give a lecture on it the next day. No. A lot of the things that y'all hear me teach are based around encounters I had years ago, even though I have encounters every day. I give myself time to sit and really just digest the encounters over a long period of time. So years might go by before I actually share an encounter with y'all. Months might go by because there's no social pressure for me to need to perform to give you a new story to wow you, because that's not my goal. My goal isn't to wow you. My goal is to inspire you, to let you know that this stuff is accessible and this can be your life. That the same heavens I'm in every day is the same heavens you have access to be in every day. That the same states of bliss that I'm in 24/7 are the same states of bliss that you have access to be in 24/7. Ah, shit. So yes, I definitely see that we're coming into a generation of Christs, a generation of Buddhas. This is why we call it an apocalypse. Apocalypse doesn't mean the end of a world. Apocalypse means unveiling. That we're moving into an apocalyptic generation, a generation that's completely unveiled. We're encountering heaven and moving in intense realms of the spirit, accessing heightened states of consciousness become normal. That we move out of a place where individuality kills our progress, where we actually begin to move as one, though we be separate. We're moving into a generation of clarity, a generation of awakening, a generation of identity, a generation of divinity. This is where we're headed, and it's sooner rather than later. So what we're experiencing is that everything that's against those principles is being dismantled. We're watching the last move fight against this upcoming move. This is a generation that will not be snuffed out by the previous generation, but is moving so fast and catapulting into so much that it can't actually be contained. This is a generation that is a heavenly explosion. This is a generation that is an imperial invasion. This is a generation that will walk in great things, and we will change what we consider normal. That certain things will be so mundane that we don't mention them anymore. We're moving into a generation where death is a thing of the past, where religion is a thing of the past, where the isms that separate us are a thing of the past. That what we consider normal is completely rebranded. Ah, shit. Are you willing to denounce fear as your God so that you can have it all? Are you willing to dethrone intellectualism as an idol so that you can have experiences, so that you can be an encounter? Are you willing to let love lead so that you can change the world? Ah, Shay. Ah, Shay. So my encouragement for you is that as you go and you go into your realms, you go into your spaces, you begin to access these realms in the spirit, you begin to access these heightened states of consciousness, that you go until you can't go. You go as far as you can, and then you bring it back to earth. I can tell you a practice that I've done is that I find in the astral plane the limits of my beliefs every day, and I slam into the wall that exists until I break through it, and then I continue with the next level of belief. Let yourself be infinite. The truth is that you already carry within yourself infinite possibilities. Now we need our infinite manifestations. So that's it. I love y'all. This was a great talk. Hopefully you got the inspiration you needed. Looking forward to seeing y'all for Dunamis Day. We're going to have some fun. As with everything else, you can find my books, my courses, my classes, everything else on my website, caveofmystery.org. If you're looking for a community, you're looking for mentorship, about a month from now, we're having, the 13-week mentorship course. So if you're interested in some higher education, some higher training, and some stuff that's going to produce some results, consider it. That's it for this session. Y'all take care. Later.